Hello, everyone. Kawinga Niwa Lomwa, Ninda Shinzi, Amanda Dawson, Ni Nonji Ai Nalahi. I'm the counselor of Munsee-Delaware Nation, and my spirit name is Ogama Benesse Kwe, meaning Chief Thunderbird Woman. I'd like to welcome you all to the 5th Annual Munsee Language and History Symposium, Anishik to Suzanne, Melissa, and the Princeton IAS, and everyone that has worked tirelessly in putting together this annual symposium. Anishik to everyone for safely traveling here and your interest in learning and connecting. I hope everyone enjoys the 3 days. Anishik.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Princeton Public Library. I'll introduce myself in just one moment, but first I need to make an announcement about this space's accessibility. The community room is T-Coil enabled. If you have T-Coil enabled devices, please feel welcome to switch them on at this time. If you don't have a T-Coil enabled device, but would like to use one of our headsets, we have made some available on the small table by the entrance. My name is Cliff Robinson, and as the Public Humanities Specialist, I lead the library's Public Humanities Initiative, which was made possible in part by the National Endowment for the Humanities. On behalf of the library, I'd like to thank you for joining us. We're honored to be hosting the first day of the 5th Annual Munsee Language and History Symposium. Thank you to all of the community members gathered here, to Suzanne Akbari, Melissa Moreton, and Maria Mercedes Tuya at the Institute for Advanced Study, and to the partners sponsoring this year's event. For last year's symposium, devoted to the theme Widening the Circle, Lunaape Land, Language, and History, the library hosted a panel on treaty agreements and responsibilities, which featured John Moses, Mary Jane Logan McCallum, and Joanne Gardner-Shadler. They discussed how treaty agreements established by wampum belts were upheld or neglected both on Lunaapahkiing and in the Lunaape diaspora. A recording of that panel is now available on both the Institute for Advanced Study and the library's YouTube channels, and I encourage you to review it, as I did earlier this week, in anticipation of today's events. With that panel, we tried to serve as a site where the circle of partnerships in the symposium could connect with the public outside of the academic spaces at the university and the institute, and where we could listen in on the panelists' remarks, advancing our own knowledge and creating opportunities for the public at the same time. This year, the theme, Reconnecting with Lunaape Land, Language, and History, invites us to deepen ongoing relationships with Lunaapeewak from Munsee-speaking tribal nations as they gather on their own traditional territory, Lunaapahkiing, with students, staff, fellows, and faculty from Princeton and IAS. I hasten to add that library staff and members of the public who attended last year's panel may also consider themselves among this widening circle and should commit themselves to deepening these relationships. I'm confident that today's program will provide ample opportunities to do just that. Thank you all for your attention. Wanishi.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you, Cliff. In Ian McCallum's, I was going to say absence, but delayed arrival, it falls to me to thank people. So I'm Suzanne Conklin-Akbari. I think I know most, if not all of you, and I say how grateful I am to be here with you. I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for making the long trip back to your homeland, and it's really good to be together. As I mentioned, Ian is delayed. He texted me that he landed a little while ago. I sent him a picture of the whole room and said, "We are waiting," in all caps. He said, "Say hi to everybody." So he'll be here ASAP. He was delayed because his son got bonked by a ball at practice last night. They had to check him for a concussion. He's totally fine, but he had to come on the first morning flight. So let me acknowledge and thank some of those who helped to support and work on this gathering. For funding, we're grateful to several departments at Princeton University, the Efron Center for American Studies, the Provost's Office, the Program for Community Engaged Scholarship, the Program in Linguistics, and SPIA in New Jersey, as well as the School of Historical Studies at the Institute for Advanced Study, which is where I work. There are many people who worked hard to prepare for these 3 days. At Princeton Public Library, Kim Dorman, where is Kim? Kim, who's at the door. Cliff Robinson, who you heard from already, and Becky Bowers, who's helping with the PowerPoint. At the American Museum of Natural History, where we'll be tomorrow, there are many helpers. We'll thank them there. But I just want to single out Katie Sabella, Sam Alderson, and Karina Cerrone. At the Seed Farm at Princeton, where we'll be on Saturday, Tessa Desmond, Gina Talt, and Michelle Novak, as well as many other helpers, especially Rob Flory, who some of you know, the farmer. And for support at Princeton's Efron Center, Karen Greco and Genesis Magnari. And I'd especially like to thank the group of people at IAS who met every week for the last few months to plan this gathering and who've worked really hard over the last month or so. Janet Yoon, Carolyn Quinones, Meredith Lausier, supported by Lisa, Mike, and George, and above all, Melissa Morton was right here. Without Melissa's organizational skill and commitment, these gatherings would not be possible. I'm really grateful. There'll be other things coming up when we're at the museum tomorrow and at the Seed Farm on Saturday. And I'd like to acknowledge the graduate students who are here to help. Rachel Schnur, where are you, Rachel? Right there, Rachel. And Sarah Lavoie Burnett, where are you, Sarah? Sarah. I wanted to point them out, to thank them, and also, if you need help, they're there, if you need anything at all. And I hope that mentioning all of these names makes it clear how much of a community has grown up around the Munsee Symposium at Princeton since its first year in 2021, when Ian McCallum, Mark Peters, and his daughter Caitlin attended. That was a really powerful gathering, but it was very small, it was hybrid. We were still very much living in a kind of semi-lockdown situation. It was mostly online, a little bit in person, included a visit to the museum with Mark and his daughter. And it laid the foundations for everything that's grown out of it year by year, getting bigger and bigger and more complex. So I'm really grateful for that. And one of the things I wanted to do was just pass around a visual aid. I was tidying my house yesterday before people came. And one of the things I was looking at is the ways in which these symposia have grown over time. So this is this year's poster, and it includes on it beadwork that we're going to be visiting with tomorrow. And I'm just gonna sort of pass it around. Yeah, and there will be one of these from this year, for you to take away at the end. Last year, you'll remember we gathered around the wampum belt that Jacob Dolson was the last holder of at Munsee-Delaware Nation, and how powerful that was to have the opportunity to convene with the Dolson family, with the belonging from the family over at IAS. And a number of people from the museum came for that visit, and it forged relationships that have made it possible for us to spend that whole day with a whole, 3 tables full of belongings tomorrow. So I think that's going to be a really extraordinary day. The year before that, in 2023, we spent a lot of time in the special collections over at Princeton University Library, visiting with a book that was made by Lenape people who worked with the Presbyterian missionary David Brainerd. And so that's another layer of Lenape people's work and creation. Anyway, so I'm just going to pass around these ones from the previous years, from 2022 and 2021, just as a sort of physical remembrance and reminder of our gatherings year by year. And want to finish remembering those with another occasion that took place in 2023. When we had the second annual Munsee Language and History Symposium in the fall of 2022, a couple of the language keepers, especially Kristin Jacobs, said, wouldn't it be great if we could have a Lenape language camp? And so everybody talked about that, and so we're like, okay, well, let's see if we can do that. And it really just came together. We were able to find funding, and then the language keepers organized 4 days of spending time out on the land at Princeton Seed Farm, and a lot of things came out of those conversations. And at that time, one of the things I was really struck by when we had that Lenape language camp is how differently we did everything. Instead of sort of paper sessions, there were half days that began with a circle and then land and language, doing activities while being on the land and learning the language. And there was a real distinction to be made between the gatherings in the fall that were kind of sort of like academic gatherings, and then the language camp. But as the years have gone by, that distinction has broken down, and it's become a totally different kind of gathering. So I just wanted to say thank you again for that. And I'm just going to take a peek at what time it is. Maybe we'll take just a few minutes break and then move into the language keepers updates, and those are going to start at 9:30. So if you want to take a little break to get some more coffee or use the washrooms, that will be fine. Before we do that, I'm just going to make a couple of very brief housekeeping announcements, and then I'll reiterate those at the end of the morning. If you may have already gotten your name tag. If you haven't already gotten it, they're up here at the front, and you could get them during that break or at the end of the morning, whenever you want to. They're alphabetized, so Melissa will help with that. Lunch and dinner are going to be served here for community members and for speakers on the program and invited guests. We'll have pizza at noon here, and then in the evening, dinner here as well. If you need to get snacks or drinks in between, you'll have noticed that the Princeton Farmers Market is open, so you may find at lunchtime you may want to pick up something there. And there's also a couple of shops in the neighborhood where you could grab a snack or a drink if that's needed in between meals. And we're going to have the museum visit tomorrow. I'll remind about that again. It's a really early start tomorrow because it takes a while to get into Manhattan and get all set up. 7 a.m. tomorrow. So get to bed early tonight. No yakking in the lobby tonight. And finally, we're going to be sharing photo release forms. When are we going to do those, Melissa? Throughout the day, if you want to check in with Melissa, we have these photo release forms because there'll be a photographer at the museum for 1 hour in the morning and a photographer at the seed farm on Saturday for 2 hours. These are meant to be for community. These are not for the institution to use. These are for if the community wants to share these images and use them in whatever way seems appropriate. And that's very clear on the form. And I think that's it on housekeeping announcements. Is there any?
Gwinganaw Loma, ni Deshinzi Maduana Kadokwe, ni Lunaapahkiing, no Njai Lunaapahkiing, Dami Munsee Palau, ni Batama Wa Wama Weni, Okichi Minato, Ki Alap Tonayan, Bendaminan and the Kashchang, Waki Lahkeewiit, Kamilan Pamausa Walkin, Wak Pam Akamiak, Pinduinan, El Junk Shishina, Wak Jausina, Lalaminan, Boomsinan and the Walik, Wak Lito Kanachana, Panawa Linda Wemakwak Walitawan, Wakitawakana, Bindaminan Katapto Nakin, Li Hilnan, Dilla, Gumakishach Pina, Wak Kapilanach Kena, Wak Shach Galingwena, Nalanda Pamausa Wakin, Wikwi Laka Kachichaka Minapata, Maich Kamichnesi Wina, Anishik. I just wanted to start out and send a blessing for all of us for being here. So I started with that. So I was asked to do a language update for language revitalization. So I'm just going to share some things, and I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'm going to try to not talk a long time because I could. So, okay. So I started in April 2024, and I taught till August 2025. And I was actually contracted by Stockbridge, Wisconsin, looking for language classes for community and one-on-one. So I agreed only if my community could join, because I didn't think it was right if I went and taught another community and my community didn't have access to it. So then it came, well, can we invite Munsee too? And I was like, okay. So this is, I did that for over a year. So we did online every Wednesday night, and there's a few people in here that have participated in that. So we had more than 50 registered for that community language class. So that got people interested. And although the funding ended for that, the language learning and teaching didn't stop. So, so this is when the initiative had started with more teaching and more giving back. So that was in April 2024. So this is, we had a small language challenge with this online class. And it was the first time I ever did it. I heard about it. I know the community down the river from us, Dishkon Sebi, did this, Chippewa, the Thames. And I thought we should try this, just to start learning phrases that we can use in everyday situations at work, with our family, wherever we were. So, except I kind of went at the language hardcore because this was 40 phrases that they learned in 4 weeks. So 4 weeks, 40 phrases, 4 hours, and they learned those because they wanted to. So what I did was I ordered some T-shirts and made this shirt. So the ones that participated, or the ones that did really well, everybody did really well. There was a few that got them all right. There was no error. They knew them. So what I did was online. I had to navigate the whole online system. I would take them in private rooms on the online, and I would ask them. I would ask them in the language, and they would give me the answer, and then I would reverse it and ask them in English to say it in a language. So this is what I did was I ordered a shirt and put all 40 phrases on the back of that T-shirt, and that initiative came out of my own pocket, but it's because I love the language so much that it's just a T-shirt and that person can hang on to it. So anybody, if you wore it or if you brought it, if you're asked those 40 phrases, they would know them. They should know them. Okay, so that was that. So this one I just started language classes for 12 weeks in my community. Started on the 8th of September. We have 50 registered participants, and they're from all 3 communities. There's people from Munsee, from Six Nations. Six Nations and Munsee are also invited. We had people driving from Niagara Falls, going to the class, spending the night, and then going back. We have somebody driving from Toronto. We had somebody coming from Six Nations. So that's what's happening in our community right now. So the other thing that I didn't mention was I work for KEB, which is called Kano Maduan Education Body. And it's in Ojibwe, and it means Kano Maduan is like a school or teaching. So it's an education body. And that education body sees 24 participating First Nations are in that organization, and Munsee is one of them. My community is in the process of joining. So they're not there yet, but Munsee is. So everything I try to do, I try to invite everyone, anybody that's Lenape. So this is the other one that we just started. This started October 1st, and it's a Lenape language challenge. And we do have 44 participants, and all 3 Lenape nations are actually participating in this. So what happens is, this is the first time that I've done this, so it's kind of a little bit overwhelming. The numbers, I didn't think I would get that many numbers, so making sure that everybody gets the email. So every month you learn 25 phrases. I record them and on Zoom, so you'll see the words, the slides, you'll see my face, you'll hear my voice, and I'll go over one of those phrases 3 times, and I try to say it slowly so that you can, so give you time to repeat it. And at the end of that, which will be at the end of May, there'll be a total of 200 phrases. So at that time, probably beginning of June, is when the people that are willing to actually participate in the challenge, you're going to come to my community, and that's when you're going to be asked in the language and in English, and there will be incentives given. So for example, say you only get 100 phrases, that's awesome. You'll get paid like $5 per phrase. So if you get 200 phrases, you could walk away with $1,000 and 200 phrases. So you're learning. So it's incentives, something to try to get people involved in language revitalization. So, and the reason that I decided to do this was because sometimes I got asked to do language stuff other places, but I was in, I think it was Chippewa, and there was Ojibwe and Oneida and myself. And the girl that was there from Ojibwe, she was from Chippewa at the time. She's the one that was on maternity leave and did a challenge, because her community did a challenge. So she was on maternity leave and she was pregnant. She had done these 200 phrases. She got every single phrase correct. So she walked away with money. Like their prize board was a little bit bigger, but they changed it because they wanted everybody to get something. They used to have first, second, and third. I think first was 5,000 or something. So, but they changed it so that everybody that participated, you got everything that you got right. You were given an incentive for. So the girl got 200 phrases. So she got first the 1 year, and then she participated in again the next year, and she got the 200. And these are different phrases. These are not the same 200 phrases. She got the second year. She got first. So she had 400 phrases. So now she works in an immersion setting and a daycare. So that's all it took, was those 2 years, and it takes commitment on your behalf. So you have to study, you have to read, you have to write. I also, there's a education platform called Quizlet that Chippewa also used, and I use it too. All I have to do is input those 25 phrases, and Quizlet makes all kinds of stuff. It makes little tests, little quizzes. So it does it in English and in the language. So you got to type in, they'll ask you what the phrase for this is, and you got to type it in, and then it'll say if it's right or wrong. It'll give you little flashcards that you can make. So I use those 2 platforms. So, but it's all on you to study it and to, learn it. So that's exciting. So that's the first thing that first time. So hopefully next year it'll be a little bit smoother. But there's a lot of people that are participating that aren't going to come to the challenge because they're first-time learners, and that's totally fine. So if there's people that want to at least learn the 25 phrases and not actually participate in the challenge, let me know, because all I got to do is you just got to give me your email and I can send you every month those 25 phrases and those Quizlets. So there are people that have already said, I don't want to, go in the challenge. I just want to learn, and that's fine. And there's people that live far away that can't come, so that's totally fine too. But this is available. Okay. The other thing is, I just signed a contract with the school board in our area, Lambton-Kent District School Board, and in the development of 30 online lessons that's available to only my community. But I did ask them, well, what about Munsee? What about their school board, Thames Valley District School Board? Because there's only two. I said there's only 2 Lenape communities in all of Canada. What can you do for them? And so I put a bug in their ear. So we'll see what happens. But because your community can also access those phrases through your school board where your students go. So that's something else that's in the process. This as well. We're in the planning stages. We have some new upcoming teachers from our community, and I know from Munsee there's one girl that just got done teachers college. So because we lack teachers, certified teachers, if you work for the school board, we don't have those. So I figured, well, if we had a Lenape additional qualification course for these certified teachers to take, so I got a hold of Six Nation Polytech because they have Ojibwe AQ course, they have Oneida AQ course, I'm pretty sure they have Cayuga, Seneca, Alden, whatever, but they have that. So I called them up and said, hey, and I know that you guys have Lenapes there. I don't know if there's Lenape teachers there. Maybe there is, I don't know. So I figured if we could get this too, that people that are teachers can have an AQ course and put those teachers in place where they need to be. So that's a planning stage there. This is the other one. I am a master's student at University of Victoria in University of Victoria for language revitalization. So I started in 2024 of July, and I will be done in April of 2026. That's only 6 months. I got to get moving. But so this is what I'm also doing. This is my cohort. So we call it Miller. So masters in language revitalization. They call it the Miller cohort. So you have people from Alaska, BC, Walpole Island, Dene people. They're all speakers. So it's awesome to sit with them and to hear what kind of things that they do in their community and what they have and what they lack. And so it's a very good opportunity. So while I'm here, what I wanted to do, I do because I have so many Munsee people. I did a language survey with your community, and I don't know how many of you have seen the results of that survey? Nobody has seen it. She has seen it. But I figured since you guys are here, I would share the survey. So how many of you guys are familiar with AAS and KEB? A little bit? Yeah? Okay, so in that organization, they have a 10-year language strategy, and they have, it's called a 7-pillar approach. So what they did was they surveyed all these communities, and they came up with this strategy based on all those surveys, telling us what it is that these communities want. And all the communities pretty much want the same thing. Like you want language immersion, you want language in elementary, you want language in the high school, you want community language, language camps, language apps. You guys want the same thing. That's what Munsee wants, the same thing. They want all these things. So I'll share that with you after, but I just want you to see, and there's some comments on there. There's talk about like an online dictionary. There's, all sorts of things that the community wants. But so that's where we are with that. But I'll show you the other thing that I wanted to talk about was after my master's, I am gonna take a PhD program Not sure where yet. I'm hunting around. But that program is going to be based on, again, language revitalization. But I'm not sure if any of you have heard about the Haudenosaunee immersion school. Has anybody heard of the adult immersion school? They use this method, and it's called the root word method. Have you guys heard of that? No. So they've been running this program for 20 years, and they run immersion, adult immersion, from September to April, and for 2 years, and those people come out as fluent speakers, highly, not superior, but really well speakers. And so because their language is written different than ours, my question is, can this method be used with Lenape? Because if it worked for them for 20 years, who's to say it can't work for us for the next 20 years? So that's what I'm going to do my PhD on, is to find out, will that work? How will it work? What's the root word? And the root word, it tells us the true meaning of language. It's not, when you open the dictionary and you see rice, the word for rice, pastak, that doesn't really mean rice. It means that it swells. So it describes it. So we should know those things, because that teaches us the cultural view of who we are, the way we see in the world. That's what the language does. So, but it's not always written that way. Another example is, like the word for cougars, Quani Washukwanayat. So Quani is long, Washukwanai is tail, Ayat is the one with the long tail. Sounds much more beautiful than cougar, So every word that we have is like that. So it talks about the beauty and the love that the language has, and we deserve to know what that means. So that's something else that I want to do. Those are all the language initiatives that are happening in my community. I just wanted to share this. So language revitalization isn't a project, it's a lifeline. So, going to University of Victoria, I read a lot of things and learned a lot of things. And so one of the things they say is that language, to not just collect words, don't learn your language like it's a memorization game, because it's not. What it needs to be, instead of it sitting in your mind like a memorization, is you have to move it to your heart. You have to put it in your heart, because that's who you are as a Lenape person. It's the love that the language has, and your love for your language. That's where it has to go. So don't let it sit in your mind. Put it right here, and that way nobody can take it. No colonizer can come and say, you can't speak anymore. You can't do that anymore. So just always remember that part, and teach your young people. That's where it sits, is right here. And, I taught Ojibwe too. And I taught those students, they were elementary students. I taught those elementary students the same thing. I said, how many days of the week are you in Anishinaabe? I'd ask them that. And first their answer was, they would see me as a teacher 3 times a week. They would say, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I was like, which was cute, but no. So I told them, you're in Anishinaabe every day, because you have the language right here. So I taught them that. Even though I'm not from that community, I told them that. And the other teachers were like, oh yeah, you are in Anishinaabe. We are in Anishinaabe every day of our lives. So those little things matter. So I'm going to share the survey results so you guys can see them. Okay, so these are some of the questions that were asked in there. Would you be interested in joining evening and weekend classes? 59% said yes. Weekend only, evening only, maybe. We have, I think it's 2% said no. So it shows that, these are the things that community wants. What would you like to see happen to revitalize the Lenape language and community? Again, there's camps, classes, family camps, language apps. I can't read that other one. Culture camps. Where else would you like to see language? In schools. In schools was the big thing. So The other thing that I didn't say is there is, starting in February, for the second term of high school, there will be a Lenape virtual high school course that'll be accredited language. So that's open to any high school student. And that was something that I got to be able to do through KAB. They had, it's like Ojibwe, and I'm only one person in there. So sometimes I feel smothered by Ojibwe-ness. And I find myself having to speak up a lot and say, don't forget about Lenape, don't forget about Lenape. So they have this course, and it's Ojibwe virtual online high school course that they deliver. And those kids are getting credits. And I was like, well, what about Lenape? Why can't we have that? And she goes, oh, we can. I said, okay, well, so I developed the course for that. And so that's going to happen. So they already have it out. They're advertising it. They're looking for a teacher. That was one of the other things that worried me. It was like, okay, well, who's going to teach it? Do we have a teacher? But I talked to somebody and I said, you know, is it worth my time to even develop this course if it's not going to happen, you know? And I told her my frustrations and my doubts, and she said, you know what, Velma, she said, if we can't find a teacher, then we'll just offer you another contract so you can teach it. So it's going to run. If maybe somebody else will take it on. If they don't, then I'll do it, but it's going to happen. So that will be the first time that we've ever had an online virtual Lenape high school course. So that will happen. Yeah. Okay. So the fourth question, would you be interested in assisting in the planning of a new language initiatives for Delaware Munsee-Delaware Nation? 50% said yes, 47 said maybe, and only 2.9 said no. So this is how it is. It's not for me to tell you what your community needs. That's why we did the survey. So if these are all the things that Munsee wants, then we got to figure out a way to help you have those things. And what ideas would you like to see happen to revitalize? So these are some of the comments that were made. Lenape immersion, land-based camp, online classes, accelerated second language training, partner with local universities and colleges to offer classes to members. We don't have an online dictionary yet, and the copyright to the dictionary is held with NAHI. Support Jamie Tucker with his project to help secure the copyright and find a way to complete the project. They're looking for Pardon? No, that statement was not from Jamie Tucker. Bilingual signage in the community. All band council to introduce themselves in a language. Bingo charity disbursement funds to go to charities, galleries, museum, archives, cultural centers that support language and Munsee culture and language. Oh, high school credit, that's done. Needs to start with the youngsters, yep. And high school classes, in-person, online, high school starting in daycare. So on October 4th, I came into Munsee community and for engagement session. And from that, we are meeting again on November 4th. It was supposed to be the 29th, but that date didn't work. So we moved it to November 4th, which is a Tuesday evening, I believe. And we're trying to establish a language working group, Munsee language working group. And that group is when you guys will say, this is what we want, you know, plans, what your next steps are going to be. How can we work together? What do you guys want? Maybe you want curriculum development for daycare, or I don't know, whatever. So that'll happen. What else is there? That's a lot, I think. And I've been working for KAB for only 6 months. So all these language initiatives that have started have opened the coming of other initiatives because of all the work. So another one is we know we have an online class now from another second language learner that does classes. So that's there. And then just recently in my community, we've had a posting for 5 Lenape language trainee positions. So those 5 people will learn from an elder speaker for 1 year. It's a 1-year contract. So that's something else that's happening. So it's almost like soon as these little projects started, then everybody's like, hey, we should do this or we should do that. So it's good. So there's a lot of potential for what can come with language revitalization. But that is, I don't think I'm forgetting anything. It's a lot of stuff. I know it's a lot of stuff going on. But if anybody wants to join those online phrases, let me know. I actually brought my business cards. I had a box and they've been at home for 6 months. I said, I'm bringing them this time. So, and you can email me and I can make sure that you get a link. But those phrases are going to be things that you can use. So you could, learn 200 phrases in a language. It's a start. It's all good work. And I think, yeah, that's the survey. I just wanted to share that. So if anybody's also interested in the community initiative for Munsee, November 4th, if you want to know more about that, I'll give you my card. You can send me email. So that's the update for Lenape language in my community and Munsee. Initiative.
Anishik Velma for sharing everything that you've done. She just recently quit working for us because we live in the United States and have budget cuts. I'm from the Stockbridge Munsee community. I'm our language manager. This is my first year. I just completed 1 year as a language manager. Prior to that, I was doing language work in the nonprofit world because in my community, politics and language don't mix very well. So one of the biggest obstacles we had when I came in was a lot of the teachers did not want to do curriculum. They wanted it to stay culturally relevant. They wanted to be natural environments. Well, then I came along. And so I'm doing something similar to what Velma's working on. I came in and I flipped it upside down. And I started building curriculum. So my education is in education, and I've been teaching language since before I was an adult. So we actually just named our community, or translated our name in the language. So we did a project with the Wisconsin DOT, the Wisconsin Department of the Highway Department. And every state in the state of Wisconsin, all 11 tribes, did this. And so it was actually really controversial because Stockbridge, which I'll get into in a little bit, isn't translatable, right? So we had to really look at the history of Stockbridge. So this is our mission statement, which our team all worked on creating. Our mindful intent for the Mohican Munsee Language and Culture Program is to provide, protect, and preserve our language. Therein our culture, natural law, worldview, connection, and identity as Mohican Munsee people. Through using cultural integrity, asserting sovereignty, and recommencing the renormalization of our inherent rights of the original tongue and cultural practices of the Lenape people. By creating a safe space with the utmost respect for our languages and culture and peaceful unification. So with the respect of coming from an educational background and a cultural background, it's really difficult at times to blend the two. And so that's pretty much what I spend my time doing, is maneuvering through that process by trying to respect the language and culture, but also meet the standards and the needs that today's world requires us to do. Okay, so as a department, these are the different things that we work on. Naming, renaming, research, and reconstruction of names and places. Program development. So our neighbors are the Menominee Nation. We border the Menominee Nation, which are also our relatives, distant relatives, but our relatives. And they have been extremely successful in their programming. What they started off doing was creating a teacher certification program underneath the political system. And they created abundance of teachers, right? And then they created a nonprofit organization that could move freely, and that created community speakers. Now they have both, but they also have agreements with each other, and they work wonderfully, and they literally brought the language back into their public spaces. Like, it's just beautiful. So when I went and visited them, they told me, You need to think about what it is your goal is. And the reason that they're successful is because they have both and they have those agreements. And because in our community, we have a dual language program. We have Mohican and we have Munsee. This makes it a little bit more complicated, right? It was important that, and we only have 4 teachers in Munsee and 3 teachers in Mohican. We have researchers, we have people who study, we have people who speak, but there's only 4 and 3 teachers. So that means they're the only ones who are willing to do the teaching and willing to put themselves in those situations. So I knew after researching, after looking at programming, after networking, after, seeing what our community need was, we needed more teachers. We needed more resources because we can have all the beautiful ideas in the world, but if we don't have the teachers, they're going to get burnt out, and we know that. So that's what I'm developing. I'm developing the framework, the curriculum, and all the pieces that go along to creating a immersive teaching certification program. A dual immersive certification program. Community resources, like Velma was talking about, making sure that they have the support resources so that they can keep studying, because you come in and you teach a class once a week or twice a week or once a month or whatever it may be. The rest of the days, you're still responsible to keep educating yourself. So we also use Quizlets, and we also use QR codes, and, giving them like the access to continue working every day. Because even if you, I think it's like a minimum, I don't have all my research notes with me, but it's like 4 hours a day, and you can become a immersive certified teacher within a year. But it's 4 hours a day, and that doesn't mean take the weekend off. It means every day. Relationship building. So that's one thing that's extremely important, because language communities are small. They're small, and it doesn't matter how big the community is. I just came back from Navajo country, and the tribes down there are anywhere from 250,000, 150,000, 50,000 people, and they have fluent speakers, but they're in the same detriments that we are. When I was down in Navajo country, they have fluent speakers, but the next generation, they're not fluent speakers, but they can communicate like at a second grade level, but the next ones can't communicate at all. They can understand it, but they can't speak it. So when I went down there, I was actually expecting to learn a lot. I thought, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to learn a lot. They've got their language intact, and they're speaking in their homes and their communities. And at the end of that convention, they were like, we need to learn from you, because they're in the beginning processes of losing their language, where we've been at it for years, so it shocked me. Gatherings and events, creating that immersive environment, and building relationships within our communities, letting the language heal us, letting the culture heal us. But we can't do that if we're not together. So we do online, we do hybrid, but we encourage coming together as a community. Multimedia outputs, that's just making sure that we can get language out, seen, whether it be through signage, or it be through YouTube, or it be through podcasts, or, just so people get comfortable with it and can see it on a regular basis. Language research. So it's pretty amazing what language can tell you. It does tell you, like, it tells us our natural law, it tells us our history, it tells us our culture, it tells us our worldview, it tells us all these beautiful things, but it also will tell us evolution of our people, how our people moved, how it was influenced. It holds the key to so many things. It's amazing. We do openings and prayers. We do assistance with the other communities, or the other departments within the community. Community classes, institutional classes where our kids are predominantly at, community visual representation, individual and family support. So just as people need, a lot of it is naming, you know, and one of the things that's becoming really popular in our community is you know, the elder women in our community are starting to name their family members, which is beautiful. But they're using documents from way, way back. And so we're really trying to start giving them that knowledge, because a lot of those documents, like, we're still working on some of these names, and they're so botched up that, I mean, we taking it apart and, you know, trying to find what the intention was. And there's so many factors, like, who wrote this down? What was their influence? You know, what was their intention? And some of them are so old that it's really difficult to bring it back to life. And the only way we can bring it back to life is if we breathe life into it by speaking it. So when you're naming somebody, you want to be able to breathe that life into it. And if we can't, then it makes it extremely difficult. So we're trying to help the community by assisting them with those things so that they don't have to work backwards, right? So program development, just like everything we do culturally relevant, we want to look at the person as a whole. And in our community, I would say that we only have about 25% traditionalists, and then the rest of them are a mix or very Christian backgrounds. So we still have a lot of traumatic impact and fear base around language and culture. So we are really looking at how to be gentle with those individuals, how to make them feel comfortable. And we noticed that a lot of the elders, so, you know, 80 and older, that they're very curious, but still hold a huge fear. So we're really trying to incorporate and understand that trauma that they hold. Where the younger generations, they're like, let's just do this, you know. So we're actually developing all these different things into our curriculum. We're looking at individuals' holistic being. So these are the things that we're developing: program curriculum, program policies and standing operating procedures, program proficiency levels, which is extremely difficult. So Velma, if you ever get there, let me know. Course curriculum, assessment and evaluation tools, and program standards. So the dual language program, I want to give you a little bit background about our community, because it's not spoken about. People don't really, and I don't know if this is another traumatic thing or a fearful thing, but one of the things that I've been taught, I've been very fortunate to have many grandmother teachers in my life since I was a really little girl. And I had really beautiful teachers. And one of the things that they always taught me was that you need to acknowledge every part of who you are. And when you don't do that, it's like the way that it was described to me is you have your ancestors that stand on your line. And when you don't acknowledge one, you make them sad, it breaks them, you know. So for me, this part is really important about the community that I come from. So I wanted to share this. So we have a dual language program. So the Stockbridge Munsee community has two official languages, the Mohican or Mohican and the Munsee or Munsee. The history of the Stockbridge Indians, which is what you'll find in the old documents, now the Stockbridge Munsee community, is deeply rooted in early efforts at reservation life and cultural resilience amid colonization and displacement, being with the first undocumented boarding school experience in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. The Eastern Coast is ground zero for assimilation. Originally known as the Praying Indians, this community was a diverse union of Mohican, Munsee, Wappinger, Narragansett, Pequot, Mohawks, Oneidas, Tuxans, Brothertons, and Niantic peoples. These communities united in their efforts to maintain their cultural identities while facing the profound impacts of colonization, displacement, and efforts to assimilate indigenous peoples through institutions like boarding schools and churches. So Mohican was the prominent language in the makeup of the community that was displaced, or they weren't really displaced, but they offered a space for them to create one of the first mission schools. But it wasn't just Mohican people, it was all those ones that I named. So Mohican was the prominent language, but there was other languages being spoken, right? The Munsee people and the Mohican people had been intermarrying and moving amongst each other communities before colonization up until the early 1900s. By the time that Stockbridge Indians reached Wisconsin, the two languages had merged. So the earliest language that was spoken, so in documentation, it was like the 1930s, but we know that we still had grandparents that were speaking up until the 70s. That language was actually a mix of Mohican and Munsee. So we have, I like to call them, because, we don't like tags, but we have old Mohican language learners and new Mohican language learners, and the old Mohican language learners learn the oldest documented language. And the new, which is who our language teachers are learning the newest documented language. That is already mixed to Mohican and Munsee. And I'll go a little bit into it after this slide. So this is kind of where this will connect to the way that we renamed we translated, we didn't rename, but how we translated Stockbridge Munsee community in the beginning on the first slide. So Stockbridge Munsee community, the legal official name, also known as the Stockbridge Munsee Band of Mohican Nation. This is the breakdown. Stockbridge. In 1738, the Mohicans permitted John Sargent to start a mission in one of their villages. Eventually, the European inhabitants gave this place the name Stockbridge after a village in England. All those who survived the genocide of the village were then known as the Stockbridge Indians. So it was all those different tribes that I mentioned in the previous slide became known as the Stockbridge Indians. So at that time, they were predominantly Mohican, but over the years, by the time they got to Wisconsin, it was probably half and half Mohican and Munsee. The Munsee and Mohican people historically intermarried and moved back and forth between communities before the arrival of colonization, sharing stories, lineage, and experiences of relocation to Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and later to Wisconsin and Ontario. When self-governance was reestablished, many families in Wisconsin identified as both Mohican and Munsee. Reflecting their intertwined heritage, their grandparents honored this duality by emphasizing the importance of embracing their full identity, passing down the past message to honor all of who we are, celebrating the richness and resilience of their shared cultural legacy. Community. Our ancestors did not see us as different people. We are all human beings. That is who we are. All of us are relatives. The idea of separation is another form of colonialism and assimilation. Community is a place in which one resides. So when we worked on Stockbridge, what we found out was there's no way to translate it. So what's the history of Stockbridge? Is a group of relative communities that come from the East. And through our history and our documents, since documents began on our people, they kept calling us Wapanaki, Wapanaki, Wapanaki. Even our relatives, when we got to Wisconsin, called Stockbridge Wapanaki, which translates a little bit different in Menominee than it does over here, But it means the people from where the sun rises, or the Eastern Star is, or, the Eastern communities. And so that's why what we decided was most historically accurate. It followed what our grandparents were showing us. I believe they kept things in plain sight for us. You just have to be able to see them. And it honored everybody. It honored all of who we are, because we weren't just being Mohican. We weren't just being Munsee. We were honoring all those different communities. That's another reason, I've really reflected on community. If you look in the States, most people are from a tribe or a nation. Well, my grandparents, literally my grandparents, when they named us, decided that we were going to be a community, which to me is honorable. Like, we're not separate people. We're all from the same land. We just live in different communities, right? So I just wanted to share that. That's one of the big projects that we worked on. So the Emerging Teacher Certification Program. And I kind of touched base on this, so I'm just going to reiterate. So creating more resources and teachers is essential to fostering a vibrant speaking community, as having people to speak to is fundamental for revitalizing language and culture. Training and developing teachers not only increases resources, but also expands the variety of classes and opportunities for public conversation, helping to renormalize and embed the language back into the community. This process is vital for reclaiming and sustaining their linguistic identity, ensuring that the language remains alive, dynamic, and integral to community life. One of my good friends said the only way to kill a language is to not speak it. So this is our team. I am the language manager. I get to do all the paperwork and fight for these guys so that they can do their job. The dual language teacher, Jeremy Mohawk up here in the right-hand corner. He has been, I would call him my language brother. We've been on the language journey together for many, many years. And he's extremely gifted. So he started off he was working with the old Mohican language learners and trying to revitalize that language. And then his heart or spirit or otherwise had told him, you need to be working on the Munsee language and the missing pieces will fall into place. So he works with both languages. Then we have our language student here and resource specialist in the left bottom hand corner, Corey C. He's got a master's degree in marketing, so we utilize that to the fullest. And then the Mohican linguist, Chris Harvey. And when I came in to this department, well, I used to teach, and then I went off and did it on my own. And then I came back because the community asked me to put this program together. He was actually teaching. And that makes it a little bit difficult because, well, he's Canadian, and he's got Irish background, and he knows the patterns, but there's certain things in our community that stayed, like words and phrases and, different things that I grew up with. So I tried to learn from him, the Mohican, and I'd be like, that's not how they told me how to say it. That's not how I grew up saying it, And so what I've realized over time is that he's a great tool and he's a great asset, but he's not so much a great teacher for our community. So he's a great teacher for the teachers, but not for the community, because that's something that's within, right? So that is our team. And so my biggest thing is sharing resources and building relationships, which is why we are here today. And whatever we can do to keep moving forward and doing that. Does anybody have any questions for me? It's just the way it's documented. Oh. So she asked, what's the difference between Mohican and Mahican? And it's just pronunciation, but and I try to honor all of them because there's people in the community who prefer one and prefer the other and prefer, and that's one thing that I have some great mentors when it comes to language, and they say, don't debate the issue.
I'm going to channel my inner vaudeville for just a minute. Those who are of a certain age in this room will get this joke. But I just flew in from New York, and there we go. Thank you, guys. It's the only thing I could think about on the plane. So I thank the organizers for putting me last today. I thank Nicole and Velma for going first and doing their song and dance to prolong things so I could get here. I appreciate it. I'll introduce myself. So, Waliknaipawni Wamawan, ni Dashinzi Ian, ni Nonjai Nalahi, Shuknuikian Berry, Nawalotamanundak Takwa. And maybe I won't bend down as much because it hurts the back. Oh, can I? I don't want to break anything.
There's a button on this side. You can bring it up.
I think I just entered the 21st century. Oh. I'll do the whole thing where I'm walking down and then walk back up again. My sister was busy texting me as I was in the car talking about the Baltimore Ravens football with the driver. And she mentioned that Velma had said something about being smothered in Ojibwe-ness. And Nicole, your presentation, to kill languages is to not use it. And I think both of those pieces sort of sum up my update for everyone here. I know that Chief and Council have put up with me and what I've been doing. So some of these things may be very, they'll know about these. Certainly the finance people probably have heard enough of me and probably, I mean, Carla's there, so I'm assuming she's also well aware of this. But for the audience as a whole, what I'll do is I'll take some time just to share the things that are going on at Munsee-Delaware and provide some context. Now, I gotta figure out how to work this. There we go. Many of you who were here last year may have heard me talk at length about birds and being over 50 and finding new interests, I guess, that, and I'm sure my mother's somewhere here, where, you know, I gave her an undue amount of hard time as a young kid going, birds, who cares? Right, I'm more interested in other things, but maybe middle age, you start to slow down, you start to notice things around you, and you start to understand the importance. So one of the big projects that's happening here is that there is a compiled list of the birds in the Munsee language, not only from New Jersey, but also from Ontario. The goal of this project is to share it with, you know, both the community, the daycare, the elementary school that the kids go to, but also the community as a whole. So this is a resource that's currently being developed by a person who has way more ability to create posters and graphic arts. So it's in the works and it should be completed by Christmas. So I just put our friend the robin there, which I think in Munsee is Chish Kokos. I can only remember that because Kokos is pig. And these robins are always eating the worms on my lawn. I used to joke with my kids when they were younger. I said, shake your fist, because these robins are eating our livestock, right? And they thought that was funny. A really big project that is in its third year is an actual course with the Munsee language. So this is being created by a group called Say It First in Ontario. The fellows who owns the company, Mike Parkhill, does work with other languages in Ontario and Canada, working with speakers to develop course modules, but also the ability now to not only read the language, but you can also hear the language. And this is a fairly large project because it requires you to come up with 3,000 utterances. So you have to create 3,000 sentences in the Munsee language in order for the computer to understand and therefore be able to work with students who could be using this. So you can think about it. How long would it take you to create 3,000 sentences in English? Not using AI, because AI doesn't help you with Munsee. So it's fairly time consuming, and it's in its third year, and we've got 2,800. This is me working in my basement with cats and dogs bugging me, trying to bang out a sentence here and there so that the computer will be able to recognize the language. And therefore, we now have a resource that can be used by our kids in our schools, the daycares, and whatnot. Because I don't live on reserve. I live 3 hours away. So this is sort of my attempt to go, you know, I lost Karen as a colleague 3 years ago, and I need help, right? So this is my reach out to try and document the language as best I can so that, you know, if tomorrow I'm not able to do this any longer, that the work would still continue. There's upwards of 80 modules as well. This came out of some of the work that we've been doing in terms of the masks, Nanatis, which you'll see tomorrow. The whole cosmology, I think I'm getting that word right. It's not about signs and stuff like that, but it's actually the stars, good. Something that came out of that was, how do we address the heavens? How do we understand our own world in terms of space? And reading some rather old texts, we've been able to find a lot of the names for different stars, or like, the evening and the morning star, Venus. And I'm sort of compiled a list of those. And of course, lists aren't any good. And what I've tried to do now is to send that off to get that created into booklets that can be shared, or posters that can be shared as well. Because I can go down a rabbit hole pretty quickly, create a wonderful list, but it lives and dies on my computer unless it goes into the hands of people who should be using it. So I think you're getting a sense that, I'm not doing a lot of language teaching at this point, but a lot of language resource generation. I found the word for dragon, which I had to share with Velma. Again, I can share it with my cat or my dog at home, but they're not that interested. So I'm busy texting Velma to share with that during the day, right? When I should be doing my daytime job. Oh, I found the word for dragon. Plants and trees. I've mentioned this several times when I've been down here, is that we're creating a comprehensive list as well of plants and trees, both that exist here in New Jersey, but also in Ontario. And that's part of the partnership with Princeton, the classes at Princeton, and then also working with community members. So I offer this. Some of you have heard me talk about this incessantly, but this is a redbud tree, and it grows at the corner of the parking lot at the community center. Quite beautiful in the springtime, and you have them down here, they're probably a dime a dozen, but they don't necessarily grow north of the border. But heaven forbid, they're actually growing, quite a number of them are actually growing in the ditches on Chippewa and Munsee-Delaware, and this is a medicine. So I mean, it's another resource I hope that I can share with those that are really interested in plants and trees, just like, if you're interested in birds, if you're interested in, the heavens. These are all things that I believe hook people into language, right? Not everybody is born a language speaker or is interested in language, but everybody's got some interest that can then encourage them, just like you said, Nicole, use the language, right? I may not be a fluent speaker, but you hit my interest with this. Kinship. When Karen and I ran the online course during the pandemic, everybody wanted to know, okay, what's my uncle's second half-sister's dog in Munsee? What would that be? And you're like, oh. And then over online, it's even harder, right? Because you're not actually working with the person in the same room, so you can't just work it out together. It's essentially, there's that dead space, and then you interrupt each other, and you're going, okay, well, maybe we should develop a resource. So using old texts, old materials, what I've tried to do is compile a list as best as I can that can be then mapped out, kind of like your family tree, right? So it's a visual, because it's something that people always ask for, right? So again, it's that hook to try and get people interested in the language. The community path between the powwow grounds and the community center, that's a piece that still continues, where it requires me to actually be down to be able to review with the naturalist in terms of what plants and trees. But we do have a list of what we were able to find. And again, that piece then can become an educational piece, because our daycare facility is fairly close by. In the future, this could also be something that could be enticing for kids from Thames Valley District School Board or London Catholic to learn more about Indigenous ways of knowledge. Land-based tends to be something really huge that we're talking about in education in Ontario. From a government standpoint, lots of boards want to approach land-based learning, and that could be one way in which non-Indigenous students could then learn more about Munsee language, but also how people use the plants and trees. This book I thought I'd bring to people's attention in case you haven't seen it. I think it's expensive, and that's one of the reasons why there's few of them. But there's a story in here that I've been trying to translate for the better part of the last month, and it's called The Origin Myth, and it was told by John Armstrong of Cattaraugus, to this fellow in 1896. And John Armstrong is part Munsee and he's part Seneca. But he gives the origin myth of, according to him, in the Munsee language. And mining, I hate to say mining because that sounds like such an English term, reading his words and seeing people try to translate this work into a sort of a modern sense has allowed me as a speaker, a second language speaker, to actually improve what I do. And again, the cat and the dog don't speak back to me. I can bug Velma, I can bug others, but they're also busy. So how do I improve my language abilities? Well, picking up John Armstrong's words, right? And working through it. And, this story is, I think, 50 pages long, front and back. And then having to work in terms of what Hewitt wrote down in 1896 to what Ives did with Anderson Pheasant, and then it's only partly done. So then you also have to now look at it and go, okay, what was John trying to say? So you can put it into sort of that modern spelling program that or at least that I understand. So this has been very helpful for me when I live in Barrie, Ontario, in a basement. No, I don't live in a basement. I'm really, it just sounds terrible here. But yes, living as I do a long way from community and being a central Ontario Munsee as opposed to a southwestern Ontario Munsee, how then do I improve my own language skills? And it just comes to pick up this text, look through it, do some reading. I don't laminate like my mom would have done. I don't have the dollars to laminate resources, but I do also want to acknowledge my mother who taught ESL students. And this was one of the strategies that she, shared with me when I was picking the language up 27, 30 years ago, right? So these strategies do hold true. And, we're starting to look at the whole, the approach that we have with our ancestors that are in museums, right? Those that have been away from community. How do you work with ancestors when they don't speak English, right? How do you approach that relationship with respect? But also, what was the language within our big house? So a lot of that now I'm starting to work on as, again, that rabbit hole that I go down. But, when John and I went to Germany and to Scotland, when you work with a mask, you can't just go up and say, hey, mask, it's Ian from Canada coming to talk to you. I'm from Munsee, by the way, because the mask doesn't understand. So how then should I, as a Munsee person, work with an ancestor who won't understand the new two languages in Canada, right? English and French, right? I need to be respectful. I need to make sure that relationship is there. Otherwise, if I was the mask, I'd be turned off of it, right? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, get out of here. Two other resources that are not in Munsee language, but I thought I'd address for everybody. We do have a follow-up, an activity that was created from last year's symposium about wampum belts. So it's an English video with my wonderful voice talking about the belts that can be used for kids in elementary school. So it's targeted for grades 6, 7, 8. So that could be used by Thames Valley. It could be used by all of Ontario schools, should that be something that the community wanted to do. And they also included a lesson plan, because all teachers are worried that they will get it wrong, right? Non-Indigenous teachers feel like they're going to get this wrong. So with a group called Learning Bird, they've taken some ideas and created lesson plans based on the information that I was able to share with them about the various belts that came from Munsee-Delaware. So I've only just focused on the belts that came from our community. as opposed to belts that respectfully belong to others or that have connections with other communities. So again, trying to document in case tomorrow I just can't document it anymore, right? But it's there for others, and I feel like that's part of my responsibility as an educator. I got to leave this world better stuff than maybe what I was given at that same age. I have to give them more updated, and it should have that voice. It has to have that community voice. It can't be somebody else doing, Munsee research, right? A non-Munsee person doing Munsee research or creating Munsee lesson plans. It has to come from a community. So I think that's it. But I appreciate your time, everybody, and I'm sorry I was late, but thanks so much. Nishi.
So if you have questions, I'll ask you to just wait for me to bring you the mic. Yeah, oh, I see one.
Hi there. Good to see you, Ian. So, good to see everybody. Nicole, in one of your slides, you had been speaking about the Lenape diaspora and sort of the westward movement of our various groups from originally on the Atlantic seaboard out west, and you had mentioned the Brotherton group as well. I don't know perhaps if there's people in the room who are Brotherton themselves, or if you're aware of what they might be doing relative to language retention and language revitalization, because I know they're another group that has been through so many trials and tribulations over the centuries as they made their westward move as well. I don't know what, if anything, of the language might be retained within that particular group.
I'm actually not sure. I know that the communities are so intertwined and intermarried that a lot of them that live in that area or that space actually just come and join us.
Yeah, because Brotherton, they're in Wisconsin as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. It's like, I'm from the New York City area, and, I have long-term relationships with people like the Shinnecock, the Puspatuck, the Pequots, the Mohegans up in Connecticut and all this. And one of the things I know is a lot of them are doing language programs, and they have people that I know on those different nations that are really going and doing a lot of language. And they're all Algonquin, right? So basically they're based in what we speak. And I know that because of the loss of language, it's like my mother was a full speaker. She grew up on Bucktown, and she was taught by her grandparents, and she didn't even speak English until about 7 or 8 years old, because that's all she learned was Lenape. But one of the things that in running around with her at a younger age, we went down to Oklahoma, did stuff for the National Museum of the American Indian, typing the elders and their language and having them put it in English so that we could preserve these type of things. And all of these files went to the National Museum of the American Indian. They have them, and they have them now in, they moved all that stuff that she did, and she went down there with my sister too to do some stuff down in Oklahoma. But she also had a tendency to be able to speak to the Shinnecock, because their language was very much like us. Now, I'm wondering, since we've lost a lot of our full-blood speakers, my grandmother was a full-blood speaker, and in fact, she used to go to your territory up in Stockbridge, Munsee, and teach Lenape back in the early 70s and late 60s. And she went up there because she was a full speaker. And one of the things is we were missing certain words, like, there's just things that we just don't have because we're losing a lot of our full-blood speakers. Now, since we were allies with the Shinnecock, the Puspatuck, and all of the tribes that were out on Long Island, and the Canarsie, and so forth. Now, these people who are creating language groups there, for the things that we are missing, and we're going to be missing things in our language, I mean, that's without saying, because it's just that we've lost a lot of the old people. Will we be able to work with them and their language programs to fill some of the gaps? Or is their enunciations that different? Because that's all it is a process of enunciation in a lot of what they speak and our tongue. So, I mean, as we go on and as we create these immersion programs and so forth, we're going to find that there are certain things that we can't, the history is gone, the language is gone for us. Will we be able to work with these other language programs of these other brother nations who were our allies historically? Will we be able to work with them and their language programs to fill in some of the gaps?
That's something that we already do. If we can't find it in Mohican or if we can't find it in Munsee. So in Wisconsin, there's 7 different Ojibwe tribes, and then there's Menominee and Potawatomi, who are all Algonquin-speaking people. So we all have all the language people work with each other. You know, we'll even go to each other's language houses and visit and sit and play games, or fill in those gaps. And we do the same thing for them. You know, if they're missing something, we kind of go around and ask everybody, well, what do you use for this? What do you use for this? What do you use for this? And then you rebuild it, right, in our language. But I like that idea, because I think that's one of the things that is missing. The more research that I do in language, the deeper I get into our regular, our history, just general history. And so I think rebuilding those relationships with those communities that are out east, and the languages are different enough to be different languages, but they're similar enough to be understood.
So the short answer is yes, then, I guess.
Yes.
Because the thing is, I've started this Lunaape collective. I'm the founder of this, and we're starting to do things. And one of the things that we're really looking at, in terms of for me raising money and doing things, is like one of the projects, the first project we really want to do is we want to establish virtual reality studios on each of our territories, not just federally recognized, but state recognized, and even those that aren't fully recognized. And the thing is, we accept people who say that they're Lenape, or communities that say they're Lenape, if they have a chief, they have a tribal council, they have a written constitution, they have a membership policy, and if they have all of these things in place, and a history, of course, we accept them, knowing full well, because both myself and my co-facilitator, Brent Stonefish, who's up on Bucktown for their Lenape days, and isn't here today. But what we decided collectively together is that we're not great white fathers. We can't look at people and say, oh, you're Lenape, you're not. Because we don't have that authority in our communities, because we're not chiefs, we're not, faith keepers or whatever else. We're people who are creating the opportunity for those people that have that position and so forth to speak and to do things. But we come up with ideas, and one of the ideas I came up with initially is creating virtual reality studios to train all of the youth on each of these territories so that they can do virtual reality things on language and on history. Because our thought was, how do we get our youth back besides just offering classes? But if we give them something with virtual reality is the first step to creating computer games. And we could create computer games in our language. And so we're looking at this, and what we'll do is I'm raising the money so that we'll come in and give them all of the equipment to do the things. And then my sister, who's a Steadicam operator, or was a union Steadicam person, and is fully aware of virtual reality, she'll go in and teach the youth and 2 or 3 of the adults in each territory to create things, and then give it up to the tribal council to determine what they actually will create. Because we're not going to determine and tell them, no, you have to do this, this, and this, because it's not our responsibility to do that. Each of our territories are separate, and should be doing things, but we can work together. But we got to give them the ability to do so, and we're trying to do it in a way in which we can get the youth back involved in our culture. And by doing virtual reality, they'll love it. I mean, they'll love creating things like that. And it's really not that easy to do because of the technology. And we'll provide the equipment. We'll provide the initial instruction on how to do it on each of the territories, and then let the territories and their tribal councils determine what they create. But that will be all used for us, and then we use Makutu. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Makutu is a creation of Aborigines in Australia. It's indigenous owned. And instead of using Google or any of them to store our intellectual property, we'll be able to do it in an indigenous owned, I don't know, I'm not really versed in computers, you know what I mean? I'm like a technical retard. But, you know, I mean, I know enough to create and to bring things into play. And so we're using that, and we're going to use that because it gives us individual communities to have access to it, and then to set security protocols to let the other nations that are in that are Lenape, and then also the non-Indians for stuff that we want to share, such as our histories of dispossession, because we all have histories of dispossession, and that's why we're all over the place. And that was the reason why I started the organization in the first place. And it was simply based on I wanted to get the history of dispossession of each of the Lenape territories, whether it be federally recognized, state recognized, or however the Europeans separated us, threw us to the winds, and took us from our natural homelands. Because in New York City, nobody knows what a Lenape is. Nobody knows what Indians were here to meet the first contact with the Dutch. And that has always bugged me. I wanted to put it together where we have it all, so that we have our history together, so that we can come together as a collective group, where we're not just looking as being individual territories anymore. Because we have a rich culture that is connected with each other, and language, I think, is the key. So, I mean, I'm looking at the collective. One of the things to be our main emphasis is concentrating on the history and the culture, to bring them both back. And one of my things, my second project will be to establish big houses in any Lenape territory that wants to have a big house, and start bringing back that to us. Because that's where we also really learn, and we need to have language. Because you can't do big house, because I was raised in longhouse, because we didn't have all of this going on, because I'm like old, right? When I was growing up, I was taken by the Confederacy, and I was raised in longhouse. It was a great law and everything. And I'm not handsome like, but you know, I mean, the things that go along with that, you have to understand it. And I think it's an important thing if we're going to re-identify with our culture and things. So I needed to know if we can work with these other brothers, because a lot of them have been talking to me about their language programs. And when they heard that we were going to start concentrating on language and providing for those territories that don't have money to pay for language things, we would come in, I'll raise the money so that they can provide money to provide teachers in their own territories. I mean, this is what we're looking to do. We'll bring that back and bring it back for us, and to be non-political, and to get off of all of this stuff with the BIA about, oh, you're federally recognized, you're not, because it's crap. It's a great white father telling us what to do. And as long as they continue to do that type of stuff, we're still under their control, which really annoys the hell out of me. And I'm sorry, I'm a person that doesn't do well with getting pissed off. Take this away from me. I said I was going to behave, so that was it. I'm not speaking the rest of it.
You're asking, George, about Brotherton, right? And there's a message from Noam Kachat. I don't know how to pronounce it, Kachat? He says, I know Phyllis and Jessica, and they're working on many things at Brothertown Indian Nation, including language. And also, the Shinnecock and Unkachog are working from Wampanoag and the Natick Dictionary and Bibles from their lands. It's different but related. Narragansett consulted with Oklahoma Lenape to find words that they lost. Mohegan did the same. They also consulted linguists, mainly the same two. And so just adding that, if people want to follow up that connection.
I have a question. John Schneider, I'm an author and a historian. I wonder, is there any early recordings, probably after Edison's invention, but are there any early recordings of the language from any indigenous peoples?
Yep. There's lots.
Oh, they're all.
Yep.
Are they on YouTube?
So there's a big collection at Ottawa Museum that I asked for probably more than 15 years ago and was told no. But I asked again, and I have access to 3 months. They're digitized, they're on tape, so they're digitizing them. But I did have access for 3 months. So it was easier to get access as a master's student than it was as a community member. I found that. So they are there. There's recordings from Munsee. There's recording from our community. And that's something that is part of the project, to hear and listen to those kind of things is. But yes, there are. Yep.
Yeah, that's how it is for us too. Most of them are in institutions, but we just use our political avenues to get access to them. But we also have a lot of family communities, or family members or community members who hold them, but they hold tight.
Yeah, yeah. Right there.
Sorry, Velma, couldn't we use, say, you said only if you have a master's that you would have access to that? Could we not use the Truth and Reconciliation calls to actions as an individual?
Oh, yeah, for
To
sure.
be- yeah.
Yeah, we have, so, that's when it hasn't been such a fight the second time I asked. It just, they kind of want to know what is it for? Like, what are you using it for? Well, because that's my language and I want to learn. So, okay, but we should, like, what we do have needs to be digitized. Like, our community members need access to it, like, all the time. So it should never be hidden. It should never be, controlled in a way where all of a sudden, say maybe a high school student wants to listen to an old tape or never heard their grandmother speak the language. They should have access to that. So that's something that our community needs to ensure. We can't expect the museum to do it. We have to figure that part out.
Just for the group here, Truth and Reconciliation is a government, for lack of a better word, study where they went from language to culture to history and education, health. And so there's 94 calls to action that the government has said that they were going to follow up on.
Yeah.
They haven't completed that yet, but it's up to us to keep pushing them. So that's why I asked about the
Yep.
being able to utilize that in order to access
Yep.
the files that they have.
They haven't said no, so just the fact of asking for them.
I see you there, but.
Hi, my name is Ethan Jardam. I'm a current history graduate student from Rutgers, and because I think it's been established at this point that obviously there has been like past efforts of recording, the Munsee language. I just wanted to ask specifically about the use of oral histories as a teaching resource for language revitalization, but specifically if there's been any like projects that revolved around like oral histories, like recorded in various Munsee communities that have been digitized. First of all, but also I guess if there's been any way to like figure out like different like platforms, like for example, like the teaching, like the online teaching app for the Munsee language, if like, you know, if there's been any way to like marry like recorded like audio tapes with like, you know, like language apps for instance. Yeah.
I think when it comes to oral history, you have to, one has to tread carefully because those aren't stories that belong to me. They could belong to somebody else or they could belong to the community. Last year, I presented a little bit about some stories that I recorded, that I translated back from English into the language that came from my family. So I knew that where these originated from, I knew that I was in a situation where I could do that. But then again, it's also, am I the only one who speaks for the family to say, yeah, okay, I'll put those out to the universe? Or should they stay within the community as a language learning tool? So that's like, there's like good intentions that, you know, let's take that story and put it into the language. But then it's also that responsibility piece afterwards, right? That there needs to be a process to ensure that you're maintaining that relationship, right, with those speakers.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, especially because I asked that question as an academic, but also someone who's not of any Native American descent, but of colonizer descent. But yeah, so yeah, I understand like the a lot of the pitfalls with oral histories. But yeah, so I found that answer really fascinating. Mm-hmm.
I think people kind of overlook the fact that there's a responsibility when it comes to oral history. And so, like, I'm not a story keeper. And when we raise story keepers, there's a lot of things that go into that, like truth and honesty and respect. And so, one of the things that I was told, like, whether I was learning a song or a teaching or a story, that I needed to hear it 7 times, but not just 7 times throughout my life before I could share and retell that. And for our women, especially, we don't do that until we've gone through the change of life, you know, when we're no longer life bearers. And so there's huge responsibilities that go with it. It's not that it's a secret, but there's responsibilities, like Ian said, that a great responsibility. Because we didn't have a reading and writing system, the oral history was like the reading and writing system, just as concrete. So if you're sharing, you know, this information and you're not sharing it, having all those different steps in place that prepare you, or the process of preparing you to be a holder of that, then you can disrespect it. And I don't think people understand like the in-depth understanding of that, and they just think we're all trying to be secretive when that's not the case.
Right. Oh.
While we're just waiting for the microphone, I'm just going to do a question from the chat. This is one that came from Anita Williams-Galliano asking Nicole, you mentioned looking at individuals' holistic being while creating curriculum for language learning and accounting for past trauma. Could you talk more about that? And especially, are there any techniques that you would share?
Yeah, so part of our teaching certification program, it's not just language, although language is going to be we're going to do 4 hours a day of language. The other 4 hours is also going to be, you know, trauma-informed care, treaties and responsibilities, our community's history, classroom management. So that, you know, through the years, we like went through a process of, okay, we'll try this and we'll try that, we'll try this, and we fell down, picked ourselves up, tried again, you know. So now that we've gone through years of doing this, we know what it takes. So we want to make sure that those individuals have the tools that they need. And one of them is to be a good teacher, is to have that compassion, that understanding between the language and the individual. And, you know, so if they're not aware, we're putting them into the system blindly. So those factors have to play a part as well.
Hi, my name is Paul Sutherland. I work at the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, and I wanted to follow up on the question about accessing recordings from institutions, from colonial institutions. We're one such institution, and we ourselves do not have. We don't create barriers to access based on having to have institution basically have an institutional affiliation or anything like that. Obviously, for things like ceremonial recordings, things that might be culturally sensitive, we have protocols in place for that. But if you want to reach out to us directly, we have a few Munsee recordings, not a ton, from the 1930s. We've worked with Ian before on getting copies of those and some like field notes from linguists and anthropologists. But we also have some sort of general history research collections as well, things like that. So you can reach out directly to us at the American Philosophical Society, and I'll be here, and I have some like business cards I can hand out as well. So we'd love to hear from everybody here who's interested.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for what you're doing. I think what you're doing is super valuable, and I think that we're in a time in history, I won't get into politics, but what you're doing is even more valuable with some histories being erased and stuff. So if people wanted to help you, what are things that you need? Like, how could someone help you?
Is that like the big dream, the big picture?
Yeah, like talk to us about like,
I need
if
time
you
away
got everything you wanted, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I need time away from my job to do the language job, right? Because I think the thing that people don't quite understand, and I use that in an Ontario context, is that people see language as a hobby. They hobbyize it. So when you're like, for myself, I have a daytime job which pays the bills and keeps the hydro on. You know, I'm also a dad, so I got to drive kids here and everywhere. But people seem to take, whether you speak Munsee, whether you speak Ojibwe, whether you speak Cree, whether you speak Inuktitut, it's, oh, that's nice, that's a hobby, right? You've got your spare time to do that. And spare time is building resources to share with your community, but it also takes away, right? It's the time and space to operate, but it's more than that, it's the value, right? Where's the value? And by, you know, speaking the language is, you know, sticking the middle finger to the government. Again, I live in a world where it's government run, right, in order to live. So how does language become valued? You know, collectively, we're all fighting for that, right? But I think that's that space that needs to be created for, I'll speak for myself, in order to really focus in on what's important, the language, right? And seeing it into the next century. I literally could dominate this conversation, but I'm going to stop there.
For me, language is my job. So I can do that every day, all day. And that's because I chose it. So I chose to work in language every day because that's who I am. So I get paid really well to work in language. The only thing I would need, that there's so much to do that I wish I had an assistant. I wish that working for AAS, being the only Lenape person, I wish that they had a Lenape team, you know, 3 or 4 of us working together to make sure to pump out resources and do all these things that need to happen, because I'm only one person. So I can only do so much. So that's what I would want.
I'm just thankful they're not
I'm going to
bugging
give
me
up the
anymore.
mic. But a question, like for instance, is it something where, Velma, if you wanted assistance, could a local university give credits for an independent study, and you get kids that are university students that are specifically interested in linguistics, and then they could help you, but they get their credit, so it's like a win-win. It's just an idea.
Yeah, probably.
But I can talk to you guys separately. Here we go. Who wants this?
In other words, you guys need money.
No. I think
I'm in the States, right? So raising money for Canadian projects is, I mean, I'm an ex-Soros fellow. I was the first Native American Soros fellow with the Soros Foundation. And, you know, as a consequence of that and filling the fellowship, I was contacted by Ford Foundation and all of them. So I have contacts with all of these large foundations. And I'm the money person with the project because I'm good at doing that. And what I'm saying is, if you have particular projects, well, then you can give me an idea and I can probably find you people who would be interested in providing money, even if it's in Canada, because Soros funds all over the world. You know, it's one of the foundations that goes all over the place. So, I mean, can we help you? I mean, this is something that you want?
I have a question. So do you get, like for you, you're teaching in institutionals, you're teaching schools, you're teaching community, right? How, you said that in Bucktown, they just hire or put a call out for 5 students?
Yep,
So how is that being funded?
probably through band funds.
Band funds?
Yep. So the other thing is, one of the things that I've heard in my own community is, well, we can't have language classes because we don't have any money. And, you know, I do language classes and I don't have any money to run them. I just run them. And so what has happened is you have to rent a building to use for those classes. The person knew that I wasn't doing it for money, so they just donated the center. So I don't have to worry about that. And then you have staff coming in that are learning language. Oh, we have a little bit of dollars, we'll bring drinks, you know? So that's how it is. And it's like, so for me, I never made the excuse that I can't do that because I don't have any money. I just went ahead and did it. When I do the online language challenge, I don't get paid to do that. I don't get paid to do community classes at night. I just do them because I can and because I want to. And so whatever comes of it, comes of it. I'm just putting it out in the universe. And for me, it's not about, you know, money. I just do it because I can. Maybe on down the road when there's, you know, maybe 50 people are becoming really good speakers, then we can do another project. And then maybe at that point we would need funding for something. But for right now, it's like, right now we're just want exposure. We want people to have the accessibility to learn the language first, because we don't always have that. But now we do.
I think when you're doing community courses or when you're already working in an institutional capacity, you don't need funding. It's free to learn language. But when you're asking individuals to dedicate like a full-time job and you want them to become teachers or you want them to get to a fluency level a lot quicker, then you're asking them to take time out of their life, and then you need money.
Yeah.
Cliff, do you want to, after that, then maybe come over there? And in between, I'm just going to ask a little parenthetical question that came from the chat from Kwana Nicholas. It comes back to the conversation earlier about the recordings. Wondering why the museums or people who hold these recordings haven't repatriated the recordings to the respective communities. Okay. How can I put it?
Wonder.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Yes.
It's one of those things though, right, where you're trying to support a language program, then you got to go and do battle with Library and Archives Canada. And then you got to do your daytime job and then be a parent, then cook dinner, and then go fight with Library and Archives Canada again, right? So it's like, you mentioned it, if you could clone me, that'd be great. So the clone could then go do battle with the government in order to hunt down the cylinders that, and it wasn't Harrington, but the other guy who came to Canada and recorded at Grand River, you know, and then start the process, right? It's that whole logistics, but that person needs to know what they're looking for, right? Yeah.
I think it's possible to get everything that was ever recorded, that we could all, it's possible to get them back, or even get a copy of whatever they have. I believe that, because it's our right. And I think that to go about it in a right way, it's possible. So can't isn't in there at all. It's will sometime when you know, whatever hoop we have to jump through, then we can do that.
I'm with, my name is David Schreier. I'm with the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Monmouth County, New Jersey. And I think I've spoken to a couple of you. We have a whole bunch of initiatives, but it really never occurred to me that the things you are interested revolve around language. So one of them is an educational program of some unnamed type, so it could revolve around language. But I am curious, are any of these initiatives taking off in Oklahoma at all? Thank you.
So they're Unami-speaking people, and we're Munsee-speaking people. So they're similar languages again, but different.
There's occasional reach outs between, I've had reach outs between Oklahoma and myself, just in terms of working through certain words, trying to find certain words that they might have that we have, and vice versa. So, but they're fairly infrequent. But just, I think just because we can't go knock on their door, it's a distance away.
Have you checked with the National Archives?
Yes.
I'm a documentary filmmaker as well. I would love to do something on language, but just getting a little bit of taste.
Yeah, they're in the Smithsonian, and I know there's some Smithsonian people here, but we know where they are. And those are those wax cylinders, not Harrington, but the other guy who came up to Ontario who recorded.
Is it Britain? Britain.
Some anthropologist guy. Nah, it wasn't Siebert. But Siebert's one of those guys. Vogelin. There's one other 1940s kind of guy. Yeah, sorry, my memory.
Okay. I kind of wanted just to follow up on some of the conversations in regards to funding. And I'm from Ontario. I guess we do have some that we have to. You have to be really creative in what you propose to put through. But it's true about truth and reconciliation. You can go after funding in regards to language and culture and healing. There's also funding through the 4 pillars. This was a result of a government ruling, court ruling of the loss of language as well. The other one was Heritage Canada. Heritage Canada also provides funding for languages and to be creative. And the other one is partnerships with colleges and university. I come from the Chippewa, the Thames First Nations. I've went upriver and married. And so anyways, that one of the things that we have done is we negotiated with the Fanshawe College in regards to offering a language course at a college level. And it's a fast track program, about 1.5 years, and they come out as beginner speakers. And we're going through our 3rd cohorts right now. The only thing I caution you when you do anything with colleges and universities is that you make sure that you have your OCAP principles adhered to. In other words, making sure that you are the ownership of it, of the language and any resources or anything that's been creative. My question comes down to Ian. You had mentioned in regards to the wampum belt and this resource that you develop and the indication that it could be utilized within school, especially like you mentioned the Thames Valley School Board and that. Is this something that you are producing or just sharing? Or because I can see that being just a benefit to our students to see themselves in their schools and that.
Yeah, it's on the virtual shelf, I guess. It's ready to go, but rather than, I guess, surprise Thames Valley or surprise Star with this resource, that it requires also that teacher PD, right? Like to give them this piece or give them access to both the video and the lesson plan would be, letting the cows out and they're just going to scatter. So it'd be one of my goals then to support STAR or to come down and provide that professional development for teachers in Thames Valley or London Catholic. Yeah, because I think it's valuable and I think it's sort of, we were all subject to seeing the wampum belts last year, but our kids necessarily haven't, right? And I think that's so important for them to have a better resource than whatever textbook I had in grade 7, right? Yeah, thanks.
This is a question which is kind of like a really, really, I don't know, seems like a simple or trivial question, but I think it might be, the answer might be very interesting. It's from someone in the chat named Lynn Azarki, who asks, which is better, Lunaape, spelling it the Munsee spelling, or Lunaape, the conventional Lenape spelling, or is it Lenny Lunaape? And I know this seems like a trivial question, but it kind of opens out a way of thinking about language. I wonder if you guys might talk about that.
So we didn't have a writing system, but unifying, and I know in Moraviantown they use the double vowel system. So we've kind of adopted the same thing so that going in the future, because one of the things, like when we're renaming and naming things out here in the East, there's all kinds of different spellings with all different kinds of backgrounds, and it makes it difficult for us to break those down and rebuild them or whatever we need to do with them. So unifying our spelling system makes it easier for the generations that are coming after us, right? So it's a spelling system. It's the pronunciation that matters, right?
And the number of times I heard Lenape as a kid versus Munsee, I didn't hear it very often. So I tend to always just stick with Munsee because that's what Grandma said. We're going out to Munsee, right? There was not, we're going out to Lenape territory. And so I don't even get into the context, you know, looking in the dictionary, there's a certain way to spell it according to the dictionary. But from my perspective, and I'd be interested to know from other people at Munsee, we always called it Munsee. At least that's what my relatives always called it. They never called it anything else. And sometimes it wasn't Munsee-Delaware, it was just Munsee. Doesn't help.
I think Lenny Lenape is out the door. I don't know where that came from. That was written, whatever. Actually heard it was a stutter. It has no meaning. You know, like there's like Lenny, like
That's
Lenny,
neat.
Lenny.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what that word is, but that's what I heard. It was a stutter. It doesn't have any meaning. But the true meaning is Lenape. That's the English version. But if you say it in the language, it's Lunaapao. That means original person or first human. That talks about identity, and that's who we are. So when I introduce myself, I say, Niha Lunaapahkiing. I am a Lenape woman. That's who I am. So same with Anishinaabe. They're, you know, Anishinaabe-Kwe. They are, Anishinaabe translate to an original person as well. So that word describes who you are. So that's my understanding of the word. And to say it, you know, like the double vowel system came, like, you know, Nicole said, didn't come from us. But for it to be written in the language, it sounds like it should sound. Like Lenape, that's just like an English version, like Ojibwe, you know. Anishinaabe is their word for who they are. Lunaapao is the word for who we are. So that word explains more than the English version or Lenny Lenape. Wherever you see that word, just cross it out. Yeah.
There's not any other questions. I did get a request in the chat. I gather it's someone's birthday today.
Oh, yeah.
Wilma's birthday? And so, request, if you guys would like to sing happy birthday in language to her.
So we're going to teach people the words. They're very repetitive. So Koli, Anji, Katam, Ah is all we're saying 4 times. So Koli, Anji, Katam, Koli, Anji, Katam, Ah. Koli, Yep, so then you say Kolyanji Katama, Kolyanji Katama, Kolyanji Katam Welma, Kolyanji Katama.
I realized you were still out there, and I had to take it off. So I don't know if any of the language keepers have closing remarks. After that, pizza will be here at noon. It's from the very famous Conti's Pizza. Anybody who's from Princeton will be like, yeah, Conti's. And then what we're going to have is our break. There's a farmer's market going on outside, and also a tour of the area by Eve Mandel from the Princeton Historical Society. If people are interested in that walk, we'll be departing from here after people have a chance to eat some pizza. And the afternoon session will start at 2. So any closing words from the language keepers, and then we'll
I just wanted to say that one of the things that, we had a PLC, a professional learning circle, you know, for my job, and we had some, 2 Munsee members and the rest come from Ravingtown, but one of the things that came out of that was to establish a Lenape grammar working group. So we can sit down, you know, one person can share anything that they know, because we're not linguists, right? We're all learning from each other. We all learn different things. We all know different things. But if we came together and said, I know this, I'm going to share about this one sentence. I know that the beginning, you know, just to break it apart so that we can all understand it. That was one of the things that came out of it. And I'm excited about it because I don't know everything. I'm still learning too. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that, just, you know, anything that we could share with each other, and even you guys, you know, share with each other about the language, the structure of it, what we know, what we learn, and yeah, new words.
Yeah, that would actually be really good because our language teacher, that's what he focused on when he was learning, was the actual breakdown of everything.
Yeah, I think that's another new initiative.